Today we're test flying our Eve lander using Kerble as the test bed for functionality. This rocket here is designed to launch the Eve lander into space. Here's lifting off with the power of several liquid fuel engines, some solid fuel engines. It's doing this roll pattern here. And then it'll be doing this gravity turn soon. I'm using MechJeb just to get up to space, but I find it a little glitchy once it gets up there, so I use it up till it gives me the nav point for orbiting. We just skipped ahead to the end of the boost phase, and we'll coast all the way back up to apogee. Notice the liquid fuel runs out before the solid boosters do, but we ditched those now. Now I'm just waiting for MechJeb to create the maneuver nodes to put the rocket into orbit, and once that's done I'm going to disable the autopilot because it has a tendency to glitch on me. And you can see I'm waiting for it. Yep, there it goes. It created them, and I just turn off autopilot. I turn on the controls and I select go prograde at this point, and basically we'll coast up to the next burn. Now as we approach an apogee, it's time to do our circularization burn. Fire up the main motors here. The spaceship's a little wobbly, but that's common for this type of design. The rocket's burning, and pretty soon we'll run out of fuel in the first stage. I'm going to dump the first stage. There we go, we dump the first stage and fire the engines on the lander to finish our circularization. I just skipped the boring part of fine-tuning my circularization. So now it's time to re-enter the atmosphere Kerble with our lander. So we retrograde our lander and burn the opposite direction. And so that'll move this blue line here showing where approximately it's going to land. And you want the lander to land on land. And so you see me moving the blue line over land. Now before we re-enter, I decided to do a quick look to see how our Kerbins are doing inside their cabins. Different points of view here. Now the next step of our landing is we got to get rid of our second stage here, which is what we use to slow down. And there we go, the second stage is disposed of. The next step is to deploy our heat shields. Eve is very rough on the vehicles during re-entry, so you need to have adequate shielding. Now as the vehicle gets deeper in the atmosphere, the heat shields start heating up. This is going to be a lot hotter when we re-enter the atmosphere of Eve. And this is the point where the ship will explode if it fails in the atmosphere. Eventually the atmosphere gets thick enough that the spacecraft slows down enough that we don't need the heat shields. And it's time to ditch the upper heat shield. The lower heat shield will be dumped later so it doesn't damage the vehicle. Once the speed is low enough, it's time to deploy the parachutes. Once the main parachutes fully deploy, it is time to ditch the bottom heat shield. The next step is to extend the landing legs. Lander is now close to landing. Touchdown! Now it's time to get rid of the forward support structures. After the flag is planted and all the experiments are done, it's time for liftoff, and we ditch the ladder. Now the ascent back to orbit's very similar to the first launch. I used mech jab to do it, and this kind of surprised me here. Normally I want to jettison those legs just as the rocket takes off, but when I hit engage autopilot, it immediately took off, so that kind of surprised me, because normally I have to hit spacebar for it to start. And this is such a beautiful shot here of it shooting through the clouds. I just had to run this recording long enough so you can view the nice beautiful clouds. And once again at apogee, we do a burn to complete our circularization. And we ditch the side boosters. Beautiful. Very beautiful. Now that this lander is now back in orbit, I needed to readjust its circularization to make it easier for the next phase of the operation. This lander is not designed for another reentry, so we are going to be launching another spacecraft, the Rendezvous, this one, to recover the crew in a vehicle that's designed for reentry. Now the vehicle that we're using to bring home our Kerbins from the Eve lander test flights is a stock Kerbin 10 modified with no landing legs and a hitchhiker module, because the capsule only carries 3 Kerbins and this capsule has the 1 pilot in it, and we got to grab the 3 crew from the Eve lander. And so what I'm doing here is I'm working towards rendezvousing with the Eve lander. And closer they get together to dock. And we have contact. Now that the 2 ships are docked, I need to transfer the crew from the Eve lander to the Kerble 10B rocket capsule. Now 2 of the crew can go in the capsule, and the other has to go into the hitchhiker's compartment. We're going to use the Eve lander thrust engines to slow us down for re-entry. And once we're clear that we're re-entering, we're going to turn our recovery craft around, separate stages, and use a little bit of thrust to move ourselves away from the other stages. And here we are re-entering. Heat shield gets hot. Fairly soon it'll slow down enough we can deploy the parachutes. And we'll jettison the heat shield. You see the heat shield's gone now. Parachutes are fully opened. It's slowly drifting down. And soon we'll have a touchdown. And splashdown. And our Kerbins are home.